It's painting with Mr. H. Painting with Mr. H. Painting with Mr. H. In case you didn't know, we're gonna paint.
Painting with Mr. H was filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Hello, and welcome back to Painting with Mr. H. We have a lot of fun for you today. We're going to start out by doing some watercolor techniques, and after that, we're going to do a Q&A with some special guests about copyright laws that you are just not going to want to miss. Now come a little closer and we're going to check out the supplies that we're going to use today. Today we're going to be using Strathmore 400 series watercolor paper, which I've got in a pad here, and I've pre-cut it up into different pieces for each technique. I've got my brushes here. I have a pan of watercolors. I also have a cup of water and a paper towel. These are the things that you will need to do these watercolor techniques. Now I'll set these to the side. We're going to start with our wet on dry. So my paper is dry, there's nothing else on it other than where I wrote the words there. And I'll pick a nice round brush for that. I'll use a number 6 round just to show some techniques here. So first thing I'm going to do is dip my brush in the water, and I will decide on a color to use. Feeling green today. Let's go with green. So I'm just activating that watercolor pad. Some of you may have done this before in elementary school with Crayola color watercolors. And for this, I'm just going to set that to the side, putting some of that pigment over here, right off to the side there. Okay. I'm going to stretch this a little bit further. I'm going to put just maybe 1 drop of water in there, and I'll mix that up. Okay. So for wet on dry, I'm using wet paint on dry paper, and it's just regular painting. Now that's pretty light there. I could make that a little bit more vibrant by adding more pigment back into that watercolor. Okay, and there we go. You can see what that looks like. Alright, so that is wet on dry. The next one we're going to do is wet on wet. Now I'm actually going to get 2 colors ready for this one. And you'll notice I dipped my brush in the water. I'm now drying it off. I do that between any color that I go to. Okay. That way I don't contaminate my color pads over here with different colors. So I'm going to use 2 colors on this one, and my other color I'm going to use, let's go with blue. Let's go with this darker blue here. Now we'll see, that may be a little bit more of a violet color, but I haven't used this pad of watercolor yet, so I'm not sure. Guess we'll find out together, huh? I'm activating that pad, and again I'm just putting that watercolor over here to the side. Okay. Again, cleaning out my brush, and I'll set that to the side. Now this technique, like I said, is called wet on wet. So the first thing we're going to do is take some clean water. We're going to brush that clean water right here onto the page. Okay? Wherever you'd like. You could make a pattern with it if you want. Or you could just do a big block like I'm doing. Okay? So now that I've got that watercolor on there and it's still wet, I'm going to take this wet color over here. I'm going to drop it on in here. You can see how that starts to just kind of fan out a little bit. I also want to put that other color in there too. It looks like it's going to be more of a violet color. And I could even control that a little bit more. You can see that color start to slide around. I want to put a lot more color in here. I want to do this while it's still wet, and I'm going to put just a drop of water right in there too. There's no wrong order to do this in. Once you've got that water down, there's no wrong way. Just have fun with it. Okay. Now I don't want to overmix that or else the whole thing will just turn brown. Okay, so I'll set that to the side and we'll see how it looks later. Next thing I want to do here is a flat wash. Okay, so for this I need to pick a color and I'm going to go with this blue that I've got here. Alright, so now I'm going to use my big brush that I have here. Alright, and I am getting my color into that brush. We're just going to brush across here. Now I'm going to try to do this in one smooth motion. I'm always working the same direction. I'm not going back and forth on this. Working the same direction, and I'm doing this quick. Okay? I want to go all the way across that page or whatever section that I'm working on. Yeah, so that I get a nice smooth color there. Right, and that's my flat wash. I'm using a large flat brush just to swipe in one direction across that page. Okay, then we get a nice smooth color there. Now, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put another color down. I'm going to do another wash here. And I'm going to use that for lifting later. And as I did with the last one, I'll set that aside. And we'll come back to that one a little bit later. That was on our lifting piece, on our piece labeled lifting. Next one we're gonna do here is called gradient wash. All right. Now a gradient wash starts out the same way as our flat wash did. Okay, we're gonna pick one color. And I'm going to use that blue again because I think this will look nice. It'll maybe give us the illusion of a sky. Now then, I want to do this quick. So I've got that blue. Paint that across the top here. And then I'm going to go back with water. And every time I paint into this, I'm adding just a little bit more water. I might even lift that up a little bit. Now this paper is pretty textured, so I'm getting a lot of texture in there that I don't really need, that I don't want. And some of that might go away when it dries. So again, every pass I do, I'm adding just a little bit more water and working my way down further. Now the last thing I want to do on this is I will dry off that brush, and I want to go pick up this extra water at the end here. I may have to do that a couple of times. Alright, so now I have a nice smooth gradient there. Now this would have worked a lot better. I ended up using a round brush on this, but if I would have used my flat brush, this probably would have come out a little bit smoother. Okay? So keep that in mind. Alright, but you can see how I can get a nice start to a sky there. I could maybe even go back and put in clouds later. Alright, but that's a nice gradient wash there.
A few moments later.
Alright, sorry about that. I had to run out and grab some salt for this next process that we're going to do. So, this next one, again, I've got some regular table salt. Still have my watercolors and my paper. So I'm going to pick a few colors here, just like I did with wet on wet. And actually I'm going to start this one out the same way too. Alright, paint this on here. Make sure it's really wet. And we'll drop some colors in here as well. Now then, while that is still wet, I'm going to take some regular table salt. And we'll get some right here. I like to take a little bit and just put it in my hand first. That way I can sprinkle it on where I want to. Now don't do too much, or else it'll absorb all that water. Okay, but just a little bit. Sprinkle it around there. Now I'm going to let that sit, and we will come back to that in just a little bit. I'm going to let that dry. Now then, we're going to go back to our lifting paper, and there's a few different things I want to show you on lifting. Okay. First off, if I take some clean water and I brush over, now this is dry paint now, but if I brush over with some clean water in an area, and I just keep brushing that spot until it reactivates the paint, I can dry off that brush, and then go back over it. And I'm going to do that just a few times here, brushing back over that same spot. Again, drying it out. And you can see it starts to pick up that color. Now I might not take it fully back to the white of the paper, but it'll get you pretty darn close. Now something else I want to show you on here is something called layering or glazing, and I'll show you that right over here. Okay, so I'm going to take a different color. And you'll see I can paint that right over the top here. Now I don't want to do too much with that. If I go over it too much, I'll start to lift that color up. But if I do it little by little, then I can start to build up those layers. Okay, so up here in the corner we have our lifting, and then down here we have our layering or glazing. Now let's check back in with that wet on wet. Now my wet on wet started to get some really interesting really interesting patterns in here. Just some great textures that we can use. Alright, now on this paper we're going to do masking. So I'm just going to take a piece of masking tape and I'll just put it on here somewhere. There, that should work. And we're just going to paint right over the top of that. Now I would wait for that to dry, but when it's all done, I could pull up my masking tape and look at that. Now you could think about if you wanted to make that into a specific shape. If you were to just mask some areas off. Something else you can do with this is if you have a white crayon, you could draw onto your paper first and then paint over the top, and it will avoid everywhere that white crayon is. Okay, so that's something I would try out. Alright, so we'll come back to that salt and check it out, and the one I had was just a little too light. Now you can see where it starts to get some of these sort of veins in here, but I went ahead and did another one just to try it out, and this one I think is coming out a lot better. You can really see some of those veins coming out, and this is because I used more pigment in it. Now the last one was way too watered down, okay? So this with the pigment in there looks great, and that looks how I would like for it to look, okay? So try it out on some extra pieces of paper before you go straight into your painting, you know? Try out these techniques, see what you like and what you don't like, because you might not use all of them, okay? But you never know until you try. Now we'll go ahead and lay all of these out here so you can see them. Let's put these to the side. Alright, so there's my salt, and I'll just lay that right here. I don't care. My gradient wash, lifting, and my layering, right? My lifting here, my layering here. My wet on wet, wet on dry, and my flat wash, which came out really nice. And you can see on that gradient wash too, some of those textures started to fade out a little bit more, right? And I still have some areas where I messed up a little bit. I would retry this if I were going to do it before I do it on a final painting. But this is just a technique and just to test things out a little bit, okay? So there are just a few techniques you can do. Oh, don't want to forget about masking, all right? Masking there. And remember, you can always use that white crayon on there. Okay. Now these are just a few of the techniques that you can use in order to create your paintings, and there are plenty more techniques than just that. Okay. Feel free to try them out and look up other techniques that you might like too. Now we're going to go on over and join the rest of the class. Hope you learned something about techniques today, and hope that you came up with some ideas for what you could use on your own paintings. Now don't forget, stick around for that Q&A.
It's time for the Q&A. It's time for the Q&A. You bring the Q and I'll bring the A. Time for the Q&A.
Alright, so next time we're going to start on our actual paintings, which means that I need to make sure you know what you can and cannot use. And so you cannot use any copyrighted imagery, which basically means just don't use anything off the internet. That'll make it way easier. Does anyone have any questions? Hey, I found this picture, can I use that? Did you take it? Straight off the internet, dude. No, that doesn't count.
Yeah, excuse me. I was wondering if I could use a landscape from a video game?
Definitely not, it was already made by somebody else.
Well, actually, I designed the landscape from the tools that they gave me on the video game, so, yeah.
Right, but everything in the game was already copyrighted, so it still doesn't count, no. I did this. Whoa, Garth from Wayne's World? That's incredible, wow. Thanks, I like to paint. Yes, former President George W. Bush. Yeah, could I use a picture of myself? If you took the picture, that's totally fine, yeah. Alright, cool. Because there are some evildoers out there trying to make copies of me, and I need to make sure I know which one the real me is, alright? Alright, yes, John Mulaney, what are you doing here? Because I wanted to learn how to paint, you know, like a nerd. Alright, come on, really, dude? Mr. H, Tank stopped gumming my hair. Hank, man, that's not cool. It's cool with me, brah. Okay, enough. No video games, stop messing with each other, and why is Tank the only one that gets a laugh track? Oh, come on. Okay, that's it. You can use real objects, actual people that you know, or pictures that you or a family member took. That's it. Got it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Totally, yeah.
Okay. Wow, that was a tough one. But I think we all know what we can and can't do now, which is great. Thanks again for stopping by. And as always, let's make some art.
It's painting with Mr. H. Painting with Mr. H. Painting with Mr. H. In case you didn't know, we're gonna paint.